All right, this is super exciting. We're going to bring in our guest for today's show. It's Dan Neer. He's the global head of hockey for Adidas. It's a big day. It's the Reverse Retro Day, so we're super happy to bring Dan in to get into some of the designs, talk about the project. So Dan, welcome to the Athletic Hockey Show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Sean, I know you want to get going. You've got the hard-hitting question right off the bat. I'm going to throw it to my co-host here.
We're coming in hot, Dan. Which one's your favorite? Let's go. Best job.
Thanks for the softball. You know I've worked with all the club.
Let's go.
Okay, so I'll qualify it. I grew up in Toronto, and I do have believe it or not, with all of this disruptive different stuff, I have a soft spot for traditional looks. Having said that, I do believe Reverse Retro is a chance to do something that you don't see every day, that differentiates you from your traditions and your day-to-day brand, that it is a moment in time. And so I've got a real soft spot for the teams that went way outside the expected direction. So think Tampa and think Florida as two that stand out to me as like, hey, I wasn't expecting this. But I'll tell you what, like Pooh Bear in Boston for me is just another home run. And maybe people aren't shocked by it, but there are just so many different formulas and executions here that I could say are in my top 5. And I saw Hailey tweet earlier today, like, hey, ask me in an hour and I'll have a different set of favorites.
100%.
And I'm kind of the same way today. And every conversation I have, somebody brings up a dimension that I'm like, wow, that's creative. That's cool. Like if you saw what Tampa did on their social media this afternoon, where they created a video that had throwback 80s vibes to it. They had the guy with the stereo on his shoulder and a Zach Morris cell phone, like those types of things are what this is all about. It's not just about like, hey, here's the jersey they're going to wear on the ice. It's celebrating your brand, the heritage, that kind of thing.
I was surprised to see how much variance we saw with the original 6 teams, right? Like I don't think anybody expected to see Montreal wearing Expos blue or the Wings working stripes in. But is it a challenge working with those teams that have less of a jersey history to draw from? Like when you're talking about teams who've basically worn, the same similar template for the last however long.
For sure. So, and I wouldn't call it a challenge working with the teams, but it's to your point, the history in many cases, or at least a couple of cases, it's just 2 colors, right? Mm-hmm. And so you think about what Reverse Retro is, your colors, your retros remixed. If you haven't had a ton of different logos, if you haven't had a ton of different colors, honestly, Philadelphia is another one that there's only so much you can do because of the consistency and honestly reverence around these brands. And so it is a little bit challenging. And I think you take the Canadians as an example, where we said, okay, we got to make a decision here. Do we want to live really, really purely with the guardrails of Reverse Retro as far as what you're allowed to do and what you're not? Or do we want to do something that we think would make people in Montreal go crazy, give the fans something that celebrates the city, sport heritage in Montreal, and bring in the lighter blue? It actually ended up being a pretty easy call on the Adidas end of things. And we had a really engaged and willing partner with the Habs to say, yeah, we want to do this. And so it takes a little bit of courage to do that. And honestly, I think that you go through the original 6 teams, you might like them, you might not like them, but I think everybody did something interesting this time in its own right. Okay. And so everyone thinks of the heritage and the different eras of the sport differently, but they all did something interesting in their own right. And sometimes that takes pushing. Sometimes they come to the table and they're further ahead than us, which makes these collaborations really interesting.
I think that was one of the questions that Sean and I talked about, and something that we were really interested in when we were bringing you on is, some of that collaborative process. You mentioned Montreal. Were there some teams who you had to convince to do certain things to push that envelope a little bit more? How did some of that collaboration play out? I know there's 32 of them, but were there some that come to mind in particular?
So the sequel is interesting because everyone has a little bit of hindsight around, hey, how did this all play out the first time around? And there, to some degree, were haves and have-nots the last time around, around who won Reverse Retro. And when we came back, and by the way, it wasn't optimized in the way that we initially conceived. So if you remember, it was right in the heart of the pandemic, right? It was November, December of 2020 when it launched. The teams were only playing within their division. So if you think back to when we had the Nordiques look on the Avalanche, the dream was an Avalanche Canadiens matchup, right? Where you were going to have an old Nordiques Habs thing, and it couldn't ever materialize. And so we had to adapt and go with that. I think this time around, you had a lot more teams who I would say were playing to win, and who came into the discussion realizing that, hey, if I really only want to wear this 2 times and it's received poorly, it probably does very little damage. It might be a moment that people laugh about years down the road, but if we get behind it and do it right, and the Flyers bring the Cooperall thing into it, for example, people could be talking about this forever. And it could inspire what we do as far as accessing young people in our audience in the future. Like, you all know that hockey has a lot of traditions and rigidity around what is acceptable and what's not, and hockey players posting on social media on game days and all of that. But this is the type of initiative that is designed to say, hey, we're going to bring some younger people, some more diverse people. The diversity in models and the styling and the music that we use to launch this thing, it's not a coincidence. This is all about growing the game, if you speak in a really, really broad sense. And so back to your question about, are some people hard to work with? I wouldn't say that they're hard to work with. I would just say you have different degrees of engagement and openness to achieve that set of objectives that I just outlined to you.
Are there any other? Okay, so we got the fact sheet, we got the photos. There were certain things though that like you couldn't really tell from looking at the images we got, right? We didn't know that Vegas. We wouldn't have known that Vegas had glow in the dark elements in their jersey if we wouldn't have read the fact sheet, right? So I'm glad that I did that. But the Cooperalls thing, that's a great example. That was like a nice little value added this morning, even for us who got sent this stuff, in the last few days. Like the Cooperalls thing was a surprise. Are there any other design elements that are like lurking in the background that we're going to see whenever they actually roll these out on the ice for real?
It depends how deep you've explored the fact sheet and all of that. There's nothing to the magnitude of glow in the dark that is going to show up somewhere that you didn't see coming. There's been rumors about a piece of equipment for one team that, if I'm totally honest with you, I don't know if it will materialize or not. I don't know if there's a final call on it, but I wouldn't count on it. The rumors and the speculation are kind of what makes this a lot of fun. Like, we could have sat there and pouted that there were certain leaks or people were trying to get under the hood real early on this, but we took it as a blessing that people wanted to get in and deep dive into the details on this and had such strong opinions on where they think it ought to go. And so I'm hopeful that you'll see it on ice. And actually what you'll find surprising, I'll go back to Minnesota from Reverse Retro in 2020. You saw the jersey, you liked the jersey, but then when they hooked it up with those pants that had the stars down the side, it was like, whoa. It
was lights out.
Yeah.
So was great. Also, by the way, as far as the potential secret piece of equipment, you can blink once for yes, blink twice for no. Are they blacklight activated helmets for the Vegas Golden Knights? I won't share your reaction. I just need to know for my own personal.
I try not to blink so that
I don't. We're just in a staring contest on the video here.
That's my guess. Dan is neither confirming nor denying, but I do want to get it on record on the podcast. I'm saying there's going to be blacklight helmets. Okay. I wanted to talk. No, I'm not. I wanted to ask specifically about Florida because I think they're one of the ones that kind of knocked everyone's socks off a bit. I always see that was a shoulder patch for the first however many years of their existence. The sun with the stick in the palm tree. How much of a slam dunk was it making that the primary crest? Because that's something that I always thought, as a kid forever, seeing on their jerseys, I always thought that was underutilized. So I was psyched to see that as a big part of their look.
So it's a great question. And as if you got a spy in our building, because it wasn't a slam dunk, and not a slam dunk because we didn't like the concept, but it slants a little bit of way from the rules of reverse retro, right? Like we didn't take a bunch of shoulder patches and turn them into primary logos. And so this was a topic of great debate. And kind of going back to what I was saying before about some of the other decision making, well, do we think it's what the fans are going to want? Do we think that it's what's going to make the best jersey? Do we think it's what's going to give the Panthers the best chance of winning reverse retro? Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it. And, through the whole process, I hoped that people would like the Panthers, but it's hard to know because you've got local audience and you've got national audiences that are really weighing in on this. And honestly, my favorite thing about this whole initiative is the jersey that ranks in your bottom 5 in the athletics kind of summary. Some of those jerseys are in other people's top 5. And
that's the best part of it, honestly.
It's such a cool dimension of this project that really with life, that's inconsistent. Usually people generally can align on good and bad. In this case, it's all over the board, which makes it pretty fun.
I think our rankings sum that up, honestly, because the three guys who voted on that, we were all over the place with it. There were some people, I had there was huge variance, like even within, just the three of us. That totally was something I absolutely wasn't expecting, because you do have, there are swings like the Panthers look, right? I'm sure there was some, like you said, you hope that people like it, but how can you say for sure? And then on the other end of things, it's like, all right, this is a purple Kings jersey, and we're using the crown. Everybody always that's a classic for a reason. Everybody always likes it when it comes out, right? So there was like that balance between, sure things, but also some gambles, and it seems like the gambles paid off.
Yeah, I think that they have. Now, how the local fan responds, I would say different teams have a different meter on how they measure this. Like some people want the season ticket holders to like it the most. Other people are like, no, I want to be most talked about nationally. It's a big opportunity for my club and for my brand. And if we're playing in nationally televised games, we're going to wear a reverse retro jersey. Like everybody kind of has different objectives through this. But to your point, like I just opened your rankings to see where you rank St. Louis, because right before this, I got a call from my wife. 31.
That was my next question.
31, 22, 20. Well, St. Louis is the one that my wife, who didn't have any visibility to this ahead of time, she's like, I love the Blues, and you guys have it in your 20s and 30s. And it's like,
I had it. Okay. So in my defense, I had that one in my 20s, and I felt like I was given a short shrift. I was like, this deserves better than this, but this is just where it lied. And then to see the other guys feel the same way, I was like, this is unfair. Like that to me, hit the balance, because it was something from history. It was something that they saw the ownership group wear whenever the club, entered the league, and you guys made it work in a way for 2022. So I love that one. I sincerely felt bad about having it. That is the one where I'm like, we dropped the ball. That deserves better.
I wasn't on the rankings, and I loved the Blues one, and that was one of the ones for me where it wasn't like my top 4. I tweeted the 4 that I loved the most, but I kept going back, and I really liked the Blues. So I think my question on that one for you, Dan, is how did that one specifically come together? Like, where did the idea come from to go with a prototype jersey from way back?
If I'm totally honest, I'm not in every single meeting. And so to give you like the full breakdown on who said this and who said that, I don't have it. But my recollection of it is really tied to this notion that the Blues were a team that had to make a decision on, their, call it existing portfolio, expected directions they could go with reverse retro, or trying to break the mold and do something that might be a little bit more disruptive. Hey, a team, I know the Blues is tied to a blue note, but having a gold jersey, if you're a team called the Blues, like that is a big step for if you're the head of marketing or you're the general manager, or you're the owner of the St. Louis Blues, and say like, hey, what do you think about a gold jersey? That's not like an easy decision to make. I know that we can throw that around casually, like, oh, you guys should do this. It would be great. Like they showed some real progressiveness to say, hey, this is going to be fun. We're going to bring in an identity that people aren't all that familiar with, but has links to our heritage and lineage. And so that's, my knowledge of that process. And again, it's one of those that came out and I'm like, I didn't know I'd like it as much as I do, but it came out great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm from Pittsburgh. I grew up in the 90s. That Penguins logo is, for better or worse, that's like the one of my childhood. Honestly, I have a ton of fondness for it. How did you get them to go back to that? Is that a fair question? Because that's a divisive look for a lot of different reasons. Is it the new owners? What happened here? Because people thought that ship had sailed in terms of seeing that logo on a jersey ever again. Really.
Yeah, another thoughtful question. And there was a journalist, I'm sure you know of him or know him personally, who was very quick to link it to a time for the team that people don't necessarily want to think about and remember.
Uh-huh.
The curse?
I wrote like a 10,000 word story, like history deep dive into that logo. I love it. I'm a sucker for it. So
I was not picking on you, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It was Rob Rossi. You can say his name. It's fine.
Sean.
And it's we've tried, because the Penguins play in all these outdoor games, right? They probably played more outdoor games than anybody. Mm-hmm. And we have, on many occasions, have thought about when would the right time for the Robo Penguin to come back. And so we're well aware of the divisiveness around that logo, and that there's some people that have really been ultra specific about, we don't want to see it back. And the Penguins, they were great. They've got a team that we've worked with a lot, so we have a trust in one another, right? The more times you've worked on these projects, and like maybe think back to the stadiums. It was a Stadium Series game, Philly and Pittsburgh. I can't remember what stadium it was in, but they had like the interstate look on the shoulder patches and or on the sleeves, or the Penn Turnpike, excuse me. And that was one that I think that got everybody outside their comfort zone. But by listening to the Adidas designers who like do this for a living, who has seen everything as far as what works, what doesn't, not just in hockey, but in lifestyle and fashion, in NCAA, in other businesses that we're connected to, the Penguins have become really good at saying, okay, I'm going to trust you guys. Mm-hmm. And we came to them with this, and it actually wasn't as complex a discussion as you would have thought. Everybody kind of was like, okay, it's time. And yeah, they had to go through the approval sequences and all of that, but the team got behind it. And and we were talking recently, because we've also got a Winter Classic jersey coming up with them, and they're I think everybody's nervous when their thing is going to come out, but they were like optimistically nervous in that, no, this is going to kill it. And I got a lot of friends in Pittsburgh from over the years, and a guy texted me also not long before this call, and he just a snapshot, and he said, absolutely gorgeous. And my favorite logo of all time, no joke, is what he said. And one of the biggest Pittsburgh Penguins fans I know, and I think that we'll get a lot of that reaction, honestly.
I'm so used to seeing that one. That was the white look, right? That was the white jersey look. They had the black diagonals, and then that logo was originally only on the white jersey. What's the process like to determine whether which teams get the darker look and which teams get the white? Is it luck of the draw? Is that part of the communication process? Because we did see some white jerseys mixed in there, some road looks mixed in. Yeah,
one of the takes come out of the last time is that the more whites we mix in, the more matchup games we can have. And the matchup games are much cooler for the fans when you're thinking about it being disruptive and it getting national attention and all of that. And so as a general comment, we wanted to integrate more white where it fit, but there was no like, hey, there needs to be this many, or these are the teams that need to be white. And every one we go through it. And honestly, we would, if we said we were going to do Robo Penguin with the Penguins, we probably would have shown them light and dark options that had, different ways to move things around that, like, I don't know, you've seen the Flames, at least Blasty last year had a lot of similarities to the actual Blasty they wore. It's not like the body color changed. It was black versus the OG black. So the color is more of a, hey, let's come up with the formula that we think is differentiated enough where possible and is going to make the biggest impact. Some people might have said, hey, if I'm white, maybe I can wear it more on the road and that kind of thing. But it wasn't an ultra scientific approach.
I wanted to maybe go back to the Pittsburgh conversation because you do have the Winter Classic jerseys that are going to come for that series. Are the Penguins one of the ones, because you keep having to dip back into the well in that sense because they have the Winter Classic and they've got the reverse retros and they brought back the gin and juice jerseys at one point too. Is Pittsburgh one of the ones where you're like, it's fun to dip back in because you have a lot of that source material to get into? Like, it doesn't seem like you're kind of running out of runway when it comes to good jerseys about the Pittsburgh Penguins. I would like to just say, I love the little penguin with the scarf. It's my favorite. It's my favorite logo. I had one of those jerseys. I bought one in that Winter Classic year. So that's just my 2 cents. I love this scarf penguin.
The scarf penguin always comes up in all the discussions. Yeah. You're right. Something about their lineage, their history, there's a lot to work with, right? They had the blues, they had the light blue, they had the navy blue, they've got the black and gold. There's the city color of black and gold, of course, where you can start to stretch and experiment. You've got the Pittsburgh stair step, back to gin and juice. And the amazing thing is, because I've seen it, we're not prepared to talk about it, is what you're going to see for Winter Classic is again something that doesn't look like something we've done before. It's new, it's energetic, it's like it's going to get people excited. And as people are buying their Christmas gifts and so on and so forth with Penguins jerseys, people are going to have a hard decision to make. Do I get reverse retro? Do I get Winter Classic? Because both jerseys are really strong.
That's awesome. We just have a couple more for you, Dan, because I feel like Sean and I, he did the story on it. I've been looking at these all day. Is there a jersey from a specific team that we haven't brought up that was something that was either fun to work with, something that's really stood out? I think a couple that come to mind, Colorado was cool. I really liked the colorways of New Jersey. I'm trying to think if there was others. I mean, I love the Kings jersey. I think the Kings, the back-to-back, I love the purple. It looks awesome. The Kings have been back-to-back, 2 of my favorites. Buffalo, super cool. Is there one that comes to mind for you that we haven't gotten into?
I'll give you a couple and not necessarily get into any like high level of detail, but with a couple bullet points, because you just nailed a couple of them. So New Jersey, I call out because of very specific heritage, right? They just had a third jersey for the first time last season with the jersey. And the idea that they said, okay, we're going to go back and do some Rockies colors and honor that part of the heritage. I'm not supposed to say honor. Sorry about that, Sean.
That was Mark Lazarus who wrote that, by the way. That was not me. I told Matt to let you know that's who it was.
All right.
Not me.
So I think that the jersey one is worth talking about. You mentioned LA. I don't think we talked about Johnny Canuck, but
right.
From a Canadian perspective, while Montreal, of course, has that color change, what Vancouver did, I think, is a really interesting take. And they're another team that has pretty deep uniform history as far as what was available to us. And so if you could come into the room and see the design suite of the different things that we ideated for Vancouver, like we had a lot to choose from. And so that was a fun collaboration. And then Washington is another one that stands out for me, because even though, I think that there are aspects of it that are very familiar, I think the way that the eras are meshed together, real pure reverse retro, and as much as the teases were cool, seeing the goalie equipment out at practice a few days ago, and you starting to put the pieces of, wow, how will this look when it's all put together? Like it's going to be good. So those are probably the ones I would add on to. I pulled an image up to see if I'm missing anything. I could probably say something about them all. San Jose, like you can't
It's
miss
fun.
you can't miss the Golden Seals reference.
Nope.
And there's always been like
Nope.
these individual nuanced Golden Seals throwback product, but there's never been an on ice play that I'm aware of. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, and some good runway ahead for this, I think, when they start wearing it on the ice.
I'm excited to see the goalies and like the full gear of everything. I thought the Blasty was awesome last time, and then you saw like Markstrom in the full Blasty gear. The pads were unreal. Like, so I'm excited to see what some of these look like once they're all put together.
Yeah, that's funny. Blasty and Markstrom stand out to me too from the goal setup last time. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, the pads were awesome. It was really great. And he always has a cool mask and stuff too. So Markstrom just looked great head to toe last time we had these. I guess, just to zoom out from some of the individual jerseys we've been talking about. I mean, what comes next with you guys? Like, what is the kind of next alternate jersey program you guys are looking at? Do you kind of go back into the reverse retros? Is there different stuff you guys want to play with? What comes next in terms of these jerseys and stuff like that?
You know that I'm not going to tell you anything about that.
It was a valiant. It was a valiant effort.
I asked it so confidently. It was just so normal. It was the natural follow-up question.
Look, the speculation that goes around all these things is a huge blessing. But there are people I would almost characterize as professionals that are out there right now trying to spoil the direction in the news. And it comes with a negative connotation because what they're doing is often adding a lot of energy to the program. But if I gave you anything, that wouldn't help our cause at all. What I would say is we continue to have some interesting stuff in the hopper. You can imagine third jerseys, always an important part of what we do. We've got that going. We've got event games and other, interesting things. We've got EA Sports collaborations and doing really cool stuff with the digital game, which we've done over the years. And so it's not just one thing. And we're still innovating and still trying to make hockey just a little bit cooler and bring some Adidas to the sport.
That's awesome. I love it. I think there's so many fun ones. We really appreciate you digging into some of them and taking the time to chat with us about the reverse retros.
Nice seeing you both.